Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is You Can't Do It Wrong. And this is a notion based on a shift of being and framework that creates our identity as an expression of life itself. And life expresses itself in a multitude of forms. And if we are life in its expression, we can't do it wrong, which is kind of an interesting concept. So we're going to talk a bit more about that, explore that. It should be fun conversation. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. Now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome once again. So, we're talking today about you can't do it wrong. And where this comes from, this is you can't do life wrong, sort of big scope. Um, and where it comes from is stepping into a framework, a perspective, a practice. Good morning, Shosha. Welcome. Great to have you with us this morning. So, stepping into a framework, a practice that comes from recreating our identity. And identity is kind of a hairy thing, kind of a an interesting topic in and of itself, right? Because we tend to think of ourselves as a fixed entity. Even though we grow and change, we still think that we're a fixed entity. And I'm proposing this as a practice. It's a practice that I deepen into daily, which is who I am is life expressing itself through this unique vessel. So try that on. Who I am is life expressing itself through this unique vessel. And the more I step into that, the more expansive I become. And the beauty of that, and why I call it a practice, is that if we deepen into that, what the experience is is being in service to something greater, being in service to the flow of life itself, serving the intelligence of life itself. And so life has a myriad of expressions, and all of them are an expression of life, right? So whether we're good humans or not good humans, what on whatever scale we measure, we're still an expression of life. And that's not something we can do wrong. It encompasses everything. And the benefit of that is not that we can, I suppose we can run roughshod over any kind of morality or values, but for me, the experience of being in service to life itself, as I keep reminding myself, then there's a much greater fluidity of change for me. There's a much greater allowing for my trips and stumbles, and a greater compassion for that, a greater ability to serve this greater intelligence. So in a way, and I've spoken about this before, one of the most beautiful phrases somebody introduced me to was the notion of being a hollow bone. So the bone has its unique shape, that's us. And through that hollow bone, life flows. And it's shaped by our unique shape. The more that we let go of who we think we are in this fixed form, the more we allow the energy, the intelligence of life to move through us unimpeded. And as a result, we become more fully expressed. And it might seem kind of ironic that it's by letting go of who we think we are that we become more of who we came here to be. As we let go of the impediments, we allow for life to flow more freely through us. And what I see in myself and in my clients is that when there's a lack of attachment, what comes through is so much more deeply connected, is so much more attuned to whatever the moment is calling for. So by letting go of that fixed idea of who we are, we can allow life to flow through. So what happens is that we're in service to life's expression. We get out of the way, and as our ego or whatever it is, that our insecurities, all that gets out of the way and makes room for this flow to take place. And that's when grace moves. It's really quite extraordinary. So I was talking to a client about this, and how as they have dissolved their insecurities and dissolved some of the trauma that they've experienced, or a lot of the trauma that they've experienced in life, as that has dissolved, what it's making way for is them to be in the moment and responding to the moment rather than trying to navigate the past or protect the future or trying to rein themselves in or constrain themselves or monitor themselves all the time. Instead of doing that, they're able to just allow this flow of intelligence to move through them with their unique talents and their unique skills and their unique experience. I know it sounds somewhat paradoxical, that we need to become less of who we think we are to become who we came here to be, but that's how it works, is because we're hollowing the bone. That's the dissolving of all these patterns and traumas that have been overlaid on the essence that we are. And along with that definition, also part of that, an extended part of that framework is, and we've talked about this a lot, life is happening for me and through me rather than to me. So I am a vessel of life's expression, and life is happening for me. And this is a practice. And I say it's a practice because there are lots of times where the circumstances of life are not the circumstances we desire, where we can have deep tragedy, where we can feel great pain, where things just don't go our way. And that's where the practice really kicks in, is when things are going sideways, to be able to say, okay, life is happening for me. So first, I'm having this experience, whatever this experience is, and I can allow myself to experience that experience. And sometimes those experiences rock our world. And it takes more than a minute to be able to brush it off, shake it off, or allow it to process, really, is what I mean. Not to deny it, but to move through whatever arises. Because if it's arising, again, if life is happening for us, this is another one of the tenets, one of the portions of the structure here, is if it's coming up to heal. It's coming up for us to learn something, for us to experience something. And so if something happens that's stirring all kinds of emotions, we get to use that as an opportunity to deepen into, to learn something in our experience. So we move through the emotions, and then what? So this conversation came up not just from conversation with this client, but also I had done a podcast interview with a dear friend, Dr. Kristen Ryman, who has a podcast called The Healing Grove. And the interview got posted yesterday, and I watched it, and this was some of the stuff that we were talking about. And I told about how most of my life I was really severely depressed, really, really, really clinically depressed. I never took medication, although I certainly could have. I did fill a prescription once. And it was so extreme at different points that I probably could have been institutionalized. It was so intense. And at one point when I was 40, I finally decided that where I was going to commit suicide. And I've told this story before, but I had for years and years thought about suicide and how somebody couldn't live and be as sad as I was. And then at one point, I finally decided where I was going to do it. And I had what I call a moment of grace, where it was just this voice, sort of my own awareness, whatever, was like, girl, you better get yourself some help. and and I did. And I did. And I also used that opportunity of being that bereft and that undone to choose to do what I wanted in my life. And I ended up going back to school for computer animation and multimedia. And it wasn't like an overnight, okay, I'm better, life is great. It was a long way to walk to get from there to here. But while that story may sound tragic, and and it was, I experienced it as tragic for sure. Um, it opened the gates for me to just take a completely different direction in my life. And so life was happening for me. And part of the despair that I experienced was that I was trying to live life by somebody else's rules. I was trying to live life according to somebody else's values, or a combination of other people's values, from my family to the culture. And I wasn't being true to my heart. And I just decided that that life where I was not being true to my heart was not worth living. I was not being true to the essence, the uniqueness that I am, trying to please everybody else. And it was a massive turning point to honor myself. So I've heard so many stories of people having tragic occurrences in their lives that, and maybe we can say deeply, deeply challenging, but things that they experienced as tragedies that became pivotal moments from which they emerged anew, from that were life-changing moments that put them on a path of expression, of much greater fulfillment, course correcting. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but I think that life tries to coax us in the direction of our fulfillment, first gently, first in whispers. And then those whispers get louder if we ignore them. And if we keep ignoring them, something dramatic, at least this has happened for me in my life, something dramatic occurs that I call the 2x4. It comes and clobbers you, knocks you to your knees, and then you have a path of recovery around that. But it's a course corrector. It's like bam, knocked off of one position into another. Um, because life is happening for us. And when we allow that life is happening for us, and actually, I choose to believe this, whether it's a truth with a capital T, that's for you to determine. But I live that way. And when I do, when these things that seem awful happen, I have a I have less resistance. It's the resistance that we have to life's circumstances that create our suffering. So when we're able to allow life to happen for us, even in the things that we can't even make sense of sometimes, then we don't ever really need the 2x4. Or if we experience something that feels like the 2x4, we can allow ourselves to recover more readily. Because we can say, well, what's the lesson here? So the beauty of it to me is that in the long view, if we are expressions of life, we can't do it wrong. And if we can, and we're enough. How about that? We're enough because we are life itself. And there's nothing to prove. And when you relieve yourself of the notion that there's something to prove, you open the doors to freedom and give yourself permission for your unique expression. So in that picture, I mean, it might arise that, well, there are people whose unique expression is really damaged and dangerous. If we look at nature, if we look at life, they're all different expressions. They're all different expressions. Good morning, Jennifer. Welcome. It's been some time. Welcome. Good to have you here with us. So we're talking about how you can't do life wrong. I mean, even if we suffer, even if we're inflicting pain or we're receiving pain, it's like it's all part of life's expression on the grander scheme. And then we get to do with it what we choose, whether we choose to learn lessons, whether we, not like punishment, not like you were bad, so now you have to suffer. It's not like that. It's not like that. We have all these opportunities to expand our consciousness, to expand our expression. And the more aligned we can become in the expression that we are, I'm talking about on a meta level, good and bad, it's all part of this bigger picture and how we interpret things. I'm not saying that those choices of violation and immorality are my choices. But on a meta level, it's like a movie, okay? There's lots of us like horror movies, lots of us like thrillers, you know, where there's a a good guy and a bad guy, or a a villain and a hero or heroine, right? It's drama. And what if this is like this amazing movie? I mean, I look around and I'm like, you can't write this stuff. The stuff that's happening in the world. You can't write this stuff. Nobody would believe it, right? But what if we are? What if we are writing it? What if we are collectively writing it? And if we are, maybe we can collectively transition it without having to have a 2x4. And maybe this is our 2x4 moment, you know? Um, but it's a never-ending story. And it makes me think of improv. I have never done improv, although I think it could be fun. But the way that improv goes is yes, and it's not resisting and saying, you shouldn't have said that. You should have said this. You should have done it that way. It's like, okay, yes, and you throw me the beach ball. I do something with I catch the beach ball and I do something with it. Yes, and I don't say, hey, I don't play with beach balls. And if we gave ourselves permission and allowed ourselves to realize that we can't do it wrong, that all the missteps, that's part of it, honey. That's part of what life is wanting to experience. Then maybe it lightens the load a bit. And maybe it allows us the permission to be who we really are. So with that, that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share. Rosalind says, yes, and how about that, right? Like, follow, and share me and Enlightened World Network. The links are in the description. Jennifer says, thank you. You are so welcome. And I want to thank all of you for joining us, for engaging with these morning musings on what it is to be human. So until next time.